I'm the loudest person in the room who knows the least in the room.
All right, everybody. Coach Bateman, NXG Combat Sports. Got a good longtime friend, Justin Hampton here. Known each other for over a decade now, crazy to say. So he's been a year and a half-ish, something like that.
Something like that.
As a Jiu-Jitsu dad with his sons, training, competing. So he's been very actively involved. He stepped onto the mats for his first time recently.
Yes, sir.
So tell me a little bit about what you experienced and what you wanted to share in regards to that.
Oh man, there's a lot to say.
Okay.
I guess first, jiu-jitsu for me at first was an extracurricular activity for my kids. You know, I had two sons. I was looking for something that was structured, that was safe, where they could learn similar lessons to what I learned in football and basketball, having to face adversity, bigger, stronger opponent, new challenges, and like level up. And so I was looking for all this stuff, plus the discipline, plus all those other things that come with it. And then competition came around for them. So it became a sport. And I'm familiar with how to feel about sports. But when I came on Monday, the sport and the extracurricular turned into an art form. And so I was introduced to dozens of people who, for different reasons, different people in the room for different reasons. But when I heard what Professor Owano was saying about he's never competed before, doesn't care to compete. It's like, what? 35 years, never cared to compete before? And so I started listening more about the why and trying to hear more about some of that sort of stuff. And it changed my perspective of why my sons could do it. It's not just about going to a competition and gaining the confidence and you know, training and seeing the fruit of your labor in that way, but it's also something you can devote yourself to, and it becomes a metaphor for life. It's something you can practice and get one day better each time you hit the mat. And that was something I took away. Like when you come in the gym and you're working on your stuff, it's not about mastering a move, so to speak. It's about getting a little bit better. Take one or two things away from your participation and the give and take with your partner. Like there's this give and take that's associated with it that I'm sure other sports have associated as well. Mm-hmm. But it's almost up to your partner how good you get in the moment. Like yes. You have to give so much. It's this works, this doesn't work, change it this way, do that. I can go out to the court with a basketball by myself and get better. I can, you know, work on my footwork and my dribbling and all of that, but there doesn't have to be someone there that participates and gives to my progression. And that was a very unique thing for me.
One of the biggest things is, like you said, it can become a metaphor for life. You know, jiu-jitsu is rough, it's hard, it forces you into uncomfortable positions, but it also encourages you to use the strength of your spirit as well as the mental capacity of growing your problem-solving skills, right? Mm-hmm. Reference the diversity that we have on the mats as far as all the different whys, but all the different whos mm-hmm. as well. So now not only do we get the value of learning how to endure and think mm-hmm. under pressure, but we also get to assimilate with all these different walks of life. But you get to take all of that in. And then if you got 10 guys, 10 people learn differently, 10 people perceive differently, it means something different to each person. So you get a lot going on in the totality,
sure.
Yeah?
For sure, yeah. It's, and even when he was like, you know, you have to know what you can do. So I have two different sons that are in here mm-hmm. on a regular basis. They have very different body types. Mm-hmm. One is kind of slender and skinny and long. The other one's kind of short and stout. But the way I approached their improvement at home, so I'm taking the techniques you're teaching them and I'm YouTubing the crap out of everything and trying to figure it out. But there's certain limitations mm-hmm. that it never clicked in my head that my younger son would have just because he's built different.
That's right.
So he may not be able to triangle the same way you can. And so there's ways that plays into how they approach problem solving in life too. Like, what do you have? What are the skills? What are the attributes you have that you can maximize in this situation? And so it changed. Even the day I got back and I was trying to show him that step over armbar, it changed my approach mm-hmm. because I'm not expecting both of them to do the same thing, the same way every time. And if you don't, fix it. If you don't, fix it. Now it's like, hey, how did we do in this last tournament? Yep. Okay, you may not have won, but did you get better at what we worked on?
Yes.
And he said, yeah. Then that's a win.
And your two little guys, man, they're really reflective of a lot of people in jiu-jitsu, because not only do they have different body styles, but they're just vastly different boys. They're like just who they are. Their internal makeup is just very different. Those different personalities equal different grind modes. They equal different physical attributes.
Process different.
Anything that you felt physically that was different.
In what way?
that was different here on the mat than you perceived it being from a different location.
It's a different world. It's a different world, especially because the emphasis was on pressure.
Yes, sir.
And so that's what I felt. Rolling with Coach Jeremy, I felt pressure.
Oh yeah.
And so now I got a better understanding of what my guys are going through and what they deal with, and just not just the pressure aspect, but it was a longer session than what I was used to seeing. That was about an hour and a half, 2 hours into the night. And it was around dinner time, so I hadn't eaten. So I came in a little bit, undernourished. Yeah. And they gave it to me. They gave it to me. So it's very physically exhausting. There's probably only 2 other things I've ever done. I've had the blessing of flying in an F-16 fighter jet. That was one of the most physically brutal things, because your body just ain't supposed to be doing it.
Right, exactly.
2-a-days in football and Monday and Tuesday on this mat are all relatively equivalent. Body beat down. So yeah, a newfound understanding and I guess compassion for everybody who does it, and an understanding of what my physical limitations are, trying to just jump into it, understanding I'm 43 years old. I'm not as young as I used to be, but there are folks in here who started at age 39 and have progressed, and we're standing on the side with a black belt at that point. So it was a lot, but it was eye-opening and appreciated.
Abilities and things like that are, that's one thing that we always push at NXG, and that's one thing that Professor Awano is really behind, is that if you know your why and you figure out your how, because everybody's how is different based on those attributes, age, size, agility, etc. Everybody can be on the journey, right? Your journey doesn't have to look like the next guy's, but because of that 2-a-day football, F-16, and pressure, we all subject ourselves to it, if that makes sense, in some shape, form, or fashion. So everybody has compassion for the other person, because no matter why you're doing it, you're doing it. For anybody that watches this, me and Justin are both Christians, and neither one of us make any bones about saying that out loud. In jiu-jitsu, people have adopted the iron sharpens iron phrase. But I always like to quantify that with the Bible carrying forward to say, so too one man sharpens the countenance of his friend. And you talking about being able to improve with a basketball. If I want to get better at free throws, I can just stand on that line and pound out a couple hundred shots a day, and I will get better just based on the law of averages.
No doubt.
Jiu-jitsu requires the countenance of a friend.
The how.
The how.
What you're saying.
How.
I can't figure out my how without somebody helping me figure out my how.
That's right.
That's what I think is set it apart.
You get away with doing a pattern and breaking a board. You have that live resistance. I think that that's good for our kids. It's good for us. It keeps us grounded in reality. And it also allows us to understand that my progression on the journey is relevant to my performance. And you get a lot of benefits from team sports, the same way you do from jiu-jitsu. Like football is grueling, it's hard, especially like Alabama, Georgia summers. Spring training is a whole different level in the swamp heat down here.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's always that ability to say, oh man, I'd have made that first down if you didn't miss that block. Don't happen in jiu-jitsu. You got choked because you got, so it requires the team to build you, but at the end of the day, it also forces personal accountability for your performance. And I think those are things that benefit us definitely off the mats, especially kids as they're learning to be accountable for their actions, but also while learning how to integrate, assimilate, and move and groove with the world around them. You know?
I think it's different in that you can gain so much from it approaching jiu-jitsu, and again, I'm a novice, 100%, but I think my approach now, there's a layer to it of what can I give when I show up, because I'm in partnership with somebody else. I'm not just here to gain or get better, and I'm trying to pass that on to my kids too. Like, I don't think that aspect of communication I've stressed with them when they work with each other, when they're here on the mats with somebody else. What are you giving? How can you help that person get better? Because as you have the opportunity to create the kind of interaction with your partner that you want to have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're communicating and you're communicative, they will be too.
That's right.
And you got that opportunity to improve in that way. So it's
how
just,
to train with other people is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask you one last question, and then definitely anything else that you want to add. Is there anything that you would like to add, retrospect, now that you've been on the mats,
mm-hmm.
that parents that have not been on the mats may not understand? It's very easy to watch them learn a lesson,
Yeah.
and then watch them stuck in a position in competition and kind of feel like, just do the lesson. You know the answer, just do it. Is it just that easy?
It is not that easy at all. When you're on the mat, there's so many things that's going through your mind. One is the technique of what you're doing, and it's very difficult to concentrate on more than one thing at a time. Both people have 4 limbs in almost every scenario where they're rolling, right? And so if you're concentrating on a submission, you're typically thinking, when early on, you're thinking about one limb. I'm isolating his arm. I'm trying to do this, and I'm gonna do that, and but I have to also be thinking about how much pressure to keep on the person to keep them down. I have to think about if I even have the physical capability to do it. If I'm too tired, right, do I need to rest before I do that? So there's so many different aspects going through. Plus, if you're in competition, there's a bunch of people standing around you screaming at you that you don't know.
Stress on 10.
Right, for a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid.
Yep.
And so that's a lot. And I've put undue pressure on my guys from the way I approach it. From I'm the loudest person in the room who knows the least in the room. And I've had to reconsider how I approach it. I've watched Senendoza,
Mm-hmm.
how he trains, not necessarily train, but how he coaches his son.
Mm-hmm.
At the tournament. He says almost nothing. And I've had to understand, and I asked him about it. He said, because there's so much pressure already. I'm not going to yell at him because he's already in a situation that's pressurized and he's trying to think through it. So just when there's appropriate, armbar, do this.
Super small, simple,
yeah, simple suggestion.
Non-stress, exactly.
I'm not screaming. I'm trying not. I'm getting better. So if anything, this has made me a better parent in my approach to jiu-jitsu, but also a better parent off the mats. Just